Hello, guys. Welcome to today's episode. Today we'll be discussing about the drag. So, before we start today's discussion, my first question to all the audience out there is that have we encountered drag before? And you know what? I won't take no for an answer because we all have. Let me show you how. The first image, kaipoche, either flying kites or taking kites, riding a bicycle or walking when the kites are glued to your chest. I used to do that. I used to show it off. That time maybe I was not aware that that's drag, but now I know that is drag, and that's how early memories of drag I have. The second one is the joy of life. Everyone tells you that don't put your hand outside the window of a running bus, a car, or a train. But we all do, just to experience the rush, right, of this wind which is pushing your hand backwards, and you do a lot of acrobatics over there. That is when you encounter drag. And this image is blown away. So, have you stepped out on a windy day and struggled yourself to walk in a straight line? Yeah, not because of alcohol, but because of drag. Definitely, I won't expect people to encounter these kind of situations, but these are situations where we encounter drag. So, we all have encountered in all phases of our life, and while even sitting in a room, keeping my window open, I still experience a light breeze and some negligible amount of drag trying to push me away. But I'm strong, bring more of your friends, that's what I say. So, with this little introduction and anecdote from our life, let's understand what is drag. So, what is the drag? So, in fluid dynamics, drag is referred to as air resistance. It is a force that acts opposite to the relative motion of an object which is moving with respect to a surrounding fluid. So, for better understanding, we can go with this, assuming this to be a solid body and this to be the direction where the fluid is flowing. So when these two interact, you can consider this to be stationary, better consider it is also moving with a velocity in this direction, and this velocity is much more than the velocity of the flowing fluid, hence the relative velocity is also in this direction. So what happens is that because of this flowing fluid and this whole interaction which happens, this boundary layer formation and everything, we have a drag force which is trying to push this body. He's saying, hey, you can't move in this direction, you have to go back. But our body is like, no, I'll be moving in this direction. So it depends upon the body, right? So whether it can resist the drag forces and overcome it, or whether it can succumb to it. So it all depends upon our bluff body, or in this case the streamlined body. So it all depends upon our body. So this is also backed by a equation or a formula, but rather I will say, for drag forces, that is Fd is equal to half rho v square CdA. So rho is the density of the flowing fluid. V is basically the relative velocity in this case of scenarios. Cd is the coefficient of drag. Basically, it deals with the experimental values of obtained from for different bodies. Maybe it can be a streamlined body, it can be a bluff body, it can be a small stick, it can be a curved shape hemisphere, it can be cylinder, it can be a lot of other objects. So these are basically the standard values are given by the CD, and A is the projected area, basically the frontal area which encounters this flowing fluid. Let me give you another situational example to make it much more easier. Like here, same thing, I've just replaced this aerofoil or the streamlined body with a car, and here I have a flowing fluid. So basically when the fluid is interacting, right, so here it will have a stagnation point over here, and then the rest of the fluid will try to move past and will try to follow and trace this kind of boundary. So it will try to move until and unless the energy is there. So once this energy keeps losing, so it tries to detaches from this surface and moves in this direction. And what it leaves this particular zone or this particular area of vortices and eddies is known as your wake region. So we as engineers and designers have to minimize this region, because this area, this region is responsible for the detrimental effect of drag. So more is this area, more is this drag on this vehicle, and this drag is will be powered by nothing else but powered by the engine. In order to overcome the drag, you have to get power from the engine, right? So your fuel economy will reduce, right? So in order to do that, so designers and engineers have to either tweak with CD values or with A values. So that's how the design philosophy for to encounter drags and all have come. So from bluff bodies, we have traveled to streamlined bodies, which you can see like these kind of streamlined bodies in planes. You can see this is just a cross section of a airfoil. In order to visualize in a better way, so this is, I think, this is a very good example to visualize wake region. We all have seen this, right? So when you are standing on the bridge and you see a boat going, right? You can see these kind of zones forming, this kind of white turbulent zones of water. So these turbulent zones of water are nothing but these are the wake region. So our target is, our main aim is, how can we minimize this zone uh, in order to have more fuel economy in case of vehicle, or in general in order to minimize the drag effect on a particular object where it is acting upon. So let's understand what are the different types of drag. So basically drags are classified into three types. The first is the parasitic drag. So parasitic drag is further subclassified into form drags and skin drag. So form drag is basically the pressure drag caused because of the geometry or the shape of the body, and skin friction drag is basically because of surface area of the body. So here you can see these two surfaces. Here skin friction drag is much more dominant because of more surface area. As you can see, right, more surface area is there as compared to this frontal area, but these two are more dominant in from form drag because here the frontal areas are much more, and hence the pressure difference is much more. So in general, you can compensate form drag for skin friction drag. Like you can prefer skin drag a little, and in that turn you can reduce the form drag. So therefore, we can go for these kind of things rather than these kind of things, because drag is something you can't completely omit it, because fluid will always be there, and since it depends upon the relative concept whether the fluid is flowing or not flowing, even if you're going past it, you will experience drag. So best advice, we can choose the skin friction drag, but we can minimize this form drag because this thing is much more detrimental as compared to this. Second is the lift induced drag. This comes into the picture especially when the object is in flight mode or it's flying, when this concept of lift comes in. So you have this trail vortices drag. This only happens when the aeroplane is flying or birds are flying. So the vortices from the tip of their wings, right? So that causes this trail vortices drag, and similarly you have a lift induced viscous drag also because of this viscous forces acting on those surfaces, right? And the third one is the wave drag. So this happens when the fluid object is moving in a compressible liquid medium. So in those kind of places, you have this transonic drag and supersonic drag. So basically in supersonic flights and all, or jet fighters, you will have these kind of drag experienced by them. So this was an overall idea about how we have encountered drag in our life, what is drag, and what are the different types of drag. So let's now move into drags around the globe. So we have experienced drags in all forms, as I've said. Golf ball dynamics is one such interesting phenomenon. I'll try to make one video with respect to that. So here, especially the dimples right on the surface, they ensure that the drag on the ball is minimum while it is traveling to its destination, and in a way it reduces the drag, it reattaches the flow and makes it move much swifter. That's the main agenda of it. Drag around a vehicle in flights we have already discussed, so same philosophy works for flight too. There are some turbines also which are inspired by drag, so it's basically it will come in contact with the flowing fluid, and because of the drag force they will be moving and they'll be generating electricity. So these can be wind turbines, these can be water turbines, a lot of other inspired models are also there. And one of the important thing is this teardrop shape of cyclist helmet. You can see in this image the helmet is very streamlined, right? So this will what happen, it will minimize the flow. So the flow will come here, it will try to minimize the flow and it will try to reattach the flow with the body of the cyclist, right? So minimizing the wake region. So these are some of the things that have been done. So a lot of things are there. I just gave some very common examples that you do see in your daily life, and I hope this was interesting. And don't you think in life we do face similar situations? Maybe at times we are a ball, maybe at times we are a car. We all face drags, right? So, in form of physical drag, mental drag, emotional drag, financial drag, social drag, and the list goes on. But it's not the drag that should be, going on, rather than it's we who should go on. So it's not here the drag which is opposing; it's the cyclist who is moving forward, right? So I still remember a very interesting dialogue from yesteryears from our teachers, school teachers especially. So they used to come with that particular dialogue that didn't seem much relevant at that point of time, because that was very situational at that point of time. But now when we are facing a lot of problems, hardships, issues, pandemic, right? That dialogue has become as a mantra, and that dialogue was keep moving, and keep moving. So, with that note, I would like to end my presentation. So, that's all I had to share with you all guys for today. So, thank you all, and have a nice day.